All right, so let's say we have a system, right? You have to have two things for a system. You have to have inputs and you have to have a repeated process. Systems usually have some kind of fixed points, not always. If there's an input that never changes when you do the process, it's going to be called a fixed point. Now, a fixed point can be just a plain old fixed point, but there are actually two special kinds of fixed points that you get sometimes. A fixed point can be an attractor if all of the inputs that are nearby get closer to that fixed point as you do the process to them a lot. And a fixed point is a repeller if when you start nearby, the inputs get farther and farther away. They repel all of the nearby points. By example, if we start with any real number we like, the inputs are numbers, and the process is squaring over and over again, okay, we have a system. There's not really any chaos in the system. If you were to start with, say, 1.1 and 1.2, and you were to square those numbers over and over again, the differences between the two are very large, but it's actually very predictable. We know exactly where these numbers are going. So I'm saying that the system has no chaos. Are there any fixed points? A fixed point would be a number that when you square it, you get that same number back. There are two numbers that fit that description. 0 squared is 0 and 1 squared is 1. No matter how many times you square these guys, they stay the same. Is 0 an attractor or a repeller, or maybe neither? The reality is that when you start with small numbers like 0.5 or negative 0.2 and you square them over and over again, those numbers are going to get smaller, closer to 0, and they're not going to get larger. And so what that means is 0 is an attractor. If you start nearby and you start squaring, you get closer and closer to 0. By contrast, the number 1 is a repeller. If you grab numbers like 0.8 or 0.9, these little numbers, and you start squaring, they're going to get smaller, which means farther from 1. If you grab numbers like 1.1 or 1.2 and you start squaring, they get bigger. They get farther from 1 as well. And so the number 1 counts as a repeller. Here's a different system. Grab any non-negative number that you like and start square rooting. Inputs, non-negative numbers, the process, square rooting. Are there fixed points? There absolutely are. Real numbers that you square root and they don't change are again 0 and 1. Now, is 0 an attractor or a repeller? If you grab a number like 0.1 or 0.2 and you just start square rooting over and over again, you notice that the number is going to start getting bigger. And that means that the number 0 is a repeller. The numbers go farther away from 0. And in fact, those numbers are headed straight towards 1. Any real number in the world, if you square root it over and over again, those numbers are going to get super close to 1. That makes 1 like the mother of all attractors. So 1 is an attractor, 0 is a repeller.